Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, yeah.
What is that? This is such a mysterious item.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
The first time it's mentioned in what book of the Bible?
So he discusses how it's built in, I think it's Leviticus.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an interesting item. I don't understand why it is the shape that it is or the size that it is. I can say it from this perspective. It certainly appears that that Solomon's temple is a copy of the Benai Elohim. So the temple in heaven,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where the meeting room in heaven. It appears that Solomon's temple is a copy of this or a similar facsimile, right? And
Solomon's temple is the first temple.
yes, there's a tabernacle before, but Solomon builds a temple after David gives him the money to build it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, roughly 900 BC, somewhere in the neighborhood. And we have the Ark of the Covenant. It appears, I could be wrong on this, but it appears that it's also a copy of an Ark of the Covenant in heaven. I could be wrong on this. I'm not dogmatic. I'm kind of tiptoeing into this right now. But it appears that there's a copy of this in heaven and one on earth.
Just for the audience that has no idea what it's like. What is Ark of the Covenant?
So imagine a box that's kind of a rectangle box with poles in each side covered in gold. And it requires 4 people to carry it, and you have to carry it on your shoulder. You're not allowed to carry it. It cannot be carried on a beast of burden in any way, shape, or form. It's supposed to be 4 humans that are specifically designed. I believe it's a specific family too, that are supposed to carry this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And why was it created in the first place?
So inside the Ark of the Covenant is the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets, which are the replacement of the one that Moses broke. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's important. We're not exactly certain what stone that is. It could be debated what stone that is, but it's written by the finger of God. That's important. And also is I think the term is an ipa. I could be wrong. It's a container that has some of the food from the Exodus. Which was manna from heaven, right, is inside there. And I'm not quite certain if at one point in time Aaron's staff was inside the Ark of the Covenant or not. I don't know if the measurement allows for that, right, or if it was just rested next to it. At the top of the Ark is, it's described that there are 2 angels and their wings touch. Okay, it could be debated whether or not like if you're facing it, it could be debated whether or not the wings go like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if they go like this, right? It could be like this because it's like a seat, or it could be like this. I don't know. But when the priest pours out the mechanics of it is it's poured on top, and then somehow fire accepts this sacrifice. Okay. There are many hypotheses here, so we can get into it. It's kind of fun. When it appears on scene, the Jordan River is stopped up when they cross over the Jordan River. It's stopped up miles ahead when they cross first with the Ark. I don't know how that works. I don't understand the mechanics of that. When they walk it around the city of Jericho on the last day, like they're quiet every single day, and on the last day they blow trumpets and the walls fall outward. Okay, and we actually have archaeological evidence that Jericho's walls did fall outward, which is kind of fascinating. They didn't fall inward; they fell out. There's some hypothesis that this is some form of nuclear weapon, that it's some sort of storage of power, that it's a capacitor of in some way. There's some that believe that somehow it's a sound resonance of something. I don't know. I don't understand it. I do know that in ancient Egypt, they used to have these boxes as furniture, and they would put their most valuable things in their family room. So when you look at this, like there's one you guys can look up. That's I think Anubis is on one of those boxes, right? And
like a chest.
Yeah, it's a chest, right? That would be the most prized possessions in your Egyptian household, right? So that concept wasn't new to Moses when Moses is growing up in Pharaoh's court. This concept isn't new to him. What I'm wondering is when God the Father tells him to make it, is what he's adding to Moses' chest, when you think of it from that perspective, right? His most important things that he's going to leave with his family is that which is touched by the finger of God, that which was provided by God the Father for the manna, right? And the evidence that God can do anything in this staff that budded. Could have been almonds, we're not sure what it was, right? In Aaron's staff. When I say budded, it grew almonds or whatever, but it's like a staff. That doesn't make any sense, right? What a fascinating little combination of things to leave. And in union, in concert, this box, one day a year on Yom Kippur, allows for them to have a corporate forgiveness of sins. Now, it's housed inside of Solomon's temple. Eventually, it makes its way to Solomon's temple. At one point in time, the Philistines get it. That's when I was telling you earlier, Dagon is pushed over. They send it to another place where I think they were infested by tumors, and another place was infested by rats. And the Philistines say, we're done with this, and they ship it back on a cart. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, they're like,
Thank you.
They looked inside. They shouldn't have done that. And they end up sending it on a cart with like golden tumors and rats and what have you. And which I find interesting. If you want to get in deep into conspiracy theory here, what have you, were the tumors there because is this a nuclear reactor of some sort, right? And I'll tie this to those of you that are really curious. I'll tie it to Ethiopia in a second. And it's brought back. I'm totally giving you the Reader's Digest version of this. It's brought back on a horse where they just kind of like send it, or a donkey, and they send it back to the Israelites. In the transportation, at one point in time, Uzzah reaches up. They're not carrying it properly, and a gentleman named Uzzah reaches up as the horse loses its footing to catch the ark, and he dies. Right. So this further says, is there some sort of capacitor nature to this? Did he die of electrocution? Why did God kill him? It's because God doesn't need any help, and if he wanted the ark to steady, it would have steadied. Right. Okay. It ends up inside. David brings it into Jerusalem, and Solomon ends up bringing it inside the temple that he builds for it. And it ends up in the Holy of Holies behind the curtain. Okay. Now, it's very important because there's some things that happen here in this curtain situation. It's very important to understand. I believe it was, do you remember the triumvirate off the top of your head?
No.
Crassus goes in Jerusalem, and he goes into the Holy of Holies, and so does the butcher.
Don't bother. I'm gonna pull it up.
What's the butcher's name? He was awful. He and Caesar end up fighting each other for control of the entire place. Why can't I pull his name right now? I'll pull it in a second. Anyway, both of them end up in the temple. It appears, I know this is deep into the woods, but you wanted to know, right?
Yes.
It appears that the curtain, and this is prior to Christ, so this is, I think, 50 BC, somewhere in the neighborhood. It appears the curtain that was held up between the Holy of Holies and the outer court was a giant piece of gold, like a golden beam that held the curtain. And the curtain was incredibly thick. I don't have the measurement off the top of my head. And I think it's either Crassus or Pompey. That's his name. It's either Crassus or Pompey that takes that at one point in time, like strips it, like says, "I want the golden beam."
Of course they do.
Right. Of course. Right. Now, make of that what you will. I don't know why all these things were necessary for fire to come down and accept the sacrifice. I'm open to the idea that it is a complete miracle that happened once a year. Right? I'm open to the concept that somehow this is something we're not supposed to know, right? But to me, it appears potentially to be a capacitor. Now, just to address everybody in the crowd who's curious, what about Ethiopia? There's a book called the Keber Nagast, and it's the Ethiopian King's List, hypothetically, right? And their belief is that the Queen of Sheba is from there, and that Sheba visits Solomon and has a child, and that child ends up coming back to visit Solomon 20 years later and steals the Ark of the Covenant
Yes.
from Solomon, and that it floats all the way back to Egypt, Ethiopia,
Ethiopia.
and that it is currently in a church in Ethiopia, and that all the people that are constantly elected to watch over this particular artifact, they usually run when they're asked to be a part of this because they get cataracts on their eyes and they die shortly after. Okay. That being said, for those of you interested in this, I don't know what's happening in that church in Ethiopia. I've been to Ethiopia, but not there. I've been to Addis Ababa and almost all the way to Somalia. But I don't think that's the Ark of the Covenant for a couple of reasons. One, in World War II, I think it's an English officer. It's either an English or an American officer that makes it all the way there, fighting the Nazis, and goes inside and says, that's just a replica, and bails out. Obviously, something's happening there, but I don't know.
So nowadays, in 2024, something happens in a specific church in Ethiopia. Why don't we investigate?
Because they don't want to investigate. Now, I don't think that's the Ark of the Covenant. I think it's a fake.
You mean the Ethiopians?
Yeah, I think the Ethiopians have a fake Ark of the Covenant, yeah.
Do you know that Trump has one? A replica?
Yeah.
Why? Because he's a narcissist? He wants to I want to have this replica of this great thing, or he's just so much of a Christian, which apparently he is not a very Christian.
Well, I'm not going to get into politics, but I will say that I was aware that he had one at Mar-a-Lago for about 8 months, and now that same one is in the same city that it used to that the original resided in, outside of Jerusalem, where there are, from what last I checked, 3 or 4 red heifers, which are the necessary for sacrifice. Now, I think that's weird. I think that's definitely notable. But I also don't think that that's the real one.
What do you think? Where is the real one? It was destroyed? It's impossible to destroy it, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the Babylonians keep great records, and the Babylonians never recorded carrying the Ark of the Covenant. The Romans keep great records, and the Romans, to the point where they actually have records of them, carvings of them getting back their eagles, right, that the Persians stole. The Romans would have taken great care in saying, we found this, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't. I'll say it this way. I didn't think we were going to talk about this today, so this is great. I'll say it this way. We know that Belshazzar, on the night that is described, I don't know exactly which chapter it is. On the night that's described, I think it's Daniel chapter 7 or 8, where the handwriting is on the wall. I don't know if you've read this or not, where it says, many, many tekel parson.
Yes.
Number, weight, division. And he calls in, they're having a party. They've been using the golden cups to drink from. It's basically an orgy at this point. And they get scared, and the guy's knees start knocking, and they ask Daniel to come and interpret it. And he goes, I'll give you half my kingdom, et cetera, et cetera. And Daniel goes, he prays, and he goes, basically, you've been found not to be worthy to be the king of this place. And that's when Cyrus comes in, right? And Cyrus frees the Jews. Remember this? And then they go back and they rebuild. They rebuild the temple and they rebuild the walls. This is when we get Nehemiah. It's a wonderful experience, right? They're like building the wall with a sword in their hand. All this to say, in that story, they would have had the ark if they had it. I don't think they have it. Okay. I also don't believe Jeremiah hid the ark. I think that I didn't know we were going to talk about this today.
I'm in Jeremiah right now, chapter 30.
Okay. He doesn't record this, but Jeremiah's scribe records this. And what I'm going to tell you is not in American scripture or European, or not in the 6640. Okay. Jeremiah's scribe, while operating in Egypt, claims that Jeremiah hid the ark in a specific location in the Jordan River Valley prior to Nebuchadnezzar defeating the Jews, I think in the year either 590 or 595, something like that. Okay. That he hid the ark prior to Nebuchadnezzar getting on scene in a location in the Levant, right? Which is, and I've actually been on both sides of the Dead Sea there. I've been on the Masada side, which is the Israeli side, and I've been on the Jordan side, which is and I've looked over the valley. It's amazing. And he claims that they hit it there. I don't believe that at all.
Do you think it existed in the first place, or that was just a metaphor, like a metaphor for Apple?
Oh no, I totally think it existed.
It existed.
Yeah, I totally think it existed. I think it still exists. I think everybody's looking in the wrong place.
Do you think some people are aware? Where is it?
Let me ask you this. If you're leading the entire world, like Nebuchadnezzar at this point in time is essentially one of the greatest conquerors in the world. So great, he considers himself like almost a god. He ends up losing his mind. Remember, I don't know if you've read this or not.
Not yet.
He ends up losing his mind for like 7 years. Like God's like, yeah, no, don't talk like that. I'm God. And he loses his mind for 7 years. You mean to tell me he conquers this people and everybody knew about the ark? Everybody in the area knew about it. It was the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a nuclear weapon that went down off the Pacific or wherever, somewhere around here where we could all go hike and find a nuclear weapon or some sort of very specialized, very valuable thing, don't you think people would go look for it?